Welcome back to Doctrines 1. Again, I'm your teacher, Dr. Benjamin Olson, and let's get into the names of God. In these videos, I'm not going to get into great detail of the various names of God that are mentioned throughout Scripture. What I want to do is do a little introduction, and I really want to analyze major names for God. That of Elohim, Adonai, and Yahweh in the Old Testament, and Theos in the New Testament. And so what you'll want to do is get into the notes in Populi and open up that in the Week 10 notes. There's an extensive list of names there with definitions and all of that, but we're not going to have time in the videos to really go through all of those. So let's start out with an introduction about the names of God. First of all, a name is that which distinguishes one person from or thing from another thing, a particular person or a particular thing. We have names that distinguish types of things. So like I might name a dog a Cocker Spaniel or a Golden Retriever, but if I think of the name of that actual dog, right, that might be, I don't know, Spot or Rover or whatever that particular dog's name is. In other words, I have a name in that I am a human being, I am a man, I could be called a white male, but that's what I am, not who I am. And so my particular name is Dr. Benjamin Olson. And so those are the names that I would go by. Now I might also have nicknames. I could have names that my family calls me for all growing up. My parents called me BJ. And it was always kind of annoying that because people would ask, well, what is your middle name then? Does it start with a J? And the answer is no, it actually is David. But BJ, then what is BJ short for? The answer is actually Benjamin. It's a big B and a little j, just like you would have like Jazz, J-A-Z, or J-A-S for James, or William is abbreviated as W-M, capital W, lowercase m. Anyway, that was a name that they called me, BJ. And so there's other names that I could go by, epithets that I might go by. You might call me, hey, prof, or hey, teacher, or something of that nature. That would be used as my name. My title could be used as my name. So all of those are names. Well, when we talk about God and who God is, many times the names of God are either epithets for God or titles of God. In fact, I would actually say that we don't actually have a personal name for God, and I'll discuss that as we get further into all of these various names. But let's talk a little bit more about what a name is. A name also reveals something about the person. It can, like for instance, I am Benjamin Olson, which means that my family derives from Olaf, the son of Olaf, in the Norwegian way of naming things. It could be, if you're from a British line, it could be Smith or Tanner or Fisher, meaning the occupation that they had. It could be that you're from a particular location of things. We name things like places. We name specific instruments or whatever. But Bible names almost always have significance. When Old Testament and New Testament people named things, they always named things significantly. They had reasons for naming things. We see this going all the way back to the original two human beings. When Cain was born, when Abel was born, Eve said, "This is because of this." Even when God named Adam and Eve, Adam named Eve, and he said because she would be the mother of all living, because there was reasons or whatever behind the names. The many names of God in Scripture constitute additional revelation of His nature, His character, and His relationship to man. One can know what God is like not only by His attributes, but by His names. These names are not just mere titles assigned by men, but many times they are God's revelation of Himself. He names Himself these things and tells us that we can use these as names for Him. The various circumstances which bring forth each of the names of God are important. Each name of God used in the context of a particular passage has meaning for that context. To change the name would be to change the meaning of the passage itself. Each name of God used in the context of a particular passage demonstrates how God has been active in the affairs of man. All right, let's talk about a few of these particular names. One of them is the Hebrew word Elohim. Elohim. It's translated simply as God, capital G, lowercase o-d, God, Elohim. It's the first name that's used of God in the Bible. Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. It is the most frequently used name in the Old Testament, about 200 times in Genesis alone, 2,570 times in the Old Testament. Now, it's only 2,310 times used of the God of the Bible. The remainder are used of gods of other nations, because the word Elohim can refer to other gods as well, because it just simply means God. The uppercase G is for the God of the Bible, lowercase g for the gods of nations. The word Elohim refers to the two words. The word El, E-L, signifies unlimited strength, energy, might, and power. Allah signifies to swear or to declare or to make a covenant. So these two roots, when brought together in the name Elohim, mean infinite strength and absolute faithfulness. In other words, this is the person that created the world. That's the point. The person that created the world is Elohim. The name Elohim indicates a God who is of infinite might and power. He is the strong one, the mighty leader, the supreme God who always keeps his covenant with man, and thus is to be feared, reverenced, and worshipped. The significance of Elohim as a covenant-keeping God. He is the one who keeps covenant. Based on the fact that Elohim is formed from the Hebrew root Allah, meaning to swear, is the fact that God always keeps his covenant with man. He is a covenant-making God. He is a covenant-keeping God. The very name Elohim means that God has sworn, and he will do what he has sworn. You can actually read that in Numbers 23:19. Some examples of God's character as covenant keeper in Genesis 1:1 as the covenant keeping God. The creation is his eternal sworn purpose. In Genesis 6:15, because of his infinite might and faithfulness, God was able to deliver Noah because he had sworn by himself. As Elohim, God stands in covenant relationship with Noah and is pledged to protect him and his family from the threatened destruction. We see in Genesis 17, as Elohim, God binds himself to Abraham with an everlasting covenant. We see these covenants all over. As Elohim, God remembers his covenants, thus every promise is affirmed by his will and assured by his name. The certainty of the fulfillment of God's covenant promises is wrapped up in the character of the name Elohim. I want to make I want to pause here for a second to recognize, remember, this is the Hebrew word for God, meaning this is the God of the Hebrews. Other nations had other gods because they had other names for God. For instance, the Canaanites had Baal or Baal, which literally means Lord or Master in the Hebrew language, but in the Canaanite language, that was their God. And many other gods that have names, many times that is just simply the name God in their language. So, like for instance, the Muslims, the name Allah is simply Arabic for God, making it very difficult to, when you're witnessing to them, to make a distinction between their God and the God of the Bible, since it is the same name. Elohim is a plural word. It's a plural word. It's the I am at the end of any Hebrew word. You can see that is a plural. Elohim is the plural for the word, which is almost always used for God's name, along with singular verbs and adjectives. So it uses Elohim, the plural name, but then uses a singular adjective or singular verbs to agree with that plural name, indicating they intended for it to do so. Plural form of Elohim is peculiar to the Old Testament and appears in no other Semitic language. This plural form is significant for various reasons. Some people think that it's survival of a polytheistic plural God, that there were gods that were a pantheon of a Paleo Hebrew people, and that when monotheism won out, they just continued to call their gods out of, I guess, a sense of irony. I'm not sure. This falls in line with the JEDP theory of the Old Testament. Really want to get into that Old Testament survey. It was a good class to get into that. Some view this as the Trinitarian formula in the Old Testament, that because Elohim is plural, it accounts for the fact that that God is in Trinity. However, that is probably unlikely. Most likely the view here should be that it is the majestic or intensive plural. We do this in the English when we make something plural in order to indicate its majesty or or make it intensive. Actually, a lot of Romantic languages do this as well. French and Italian and Spanish all do this. The fact that the noun is consistently used with singular verbs and with adjectives and pronouns in singular affirms this. In fact, it actually counters the idea that Elohim was originally a plural god or a pantheon of gods. That is, the word is expressed in the plural to give it a stronger meaning. The plural denotes God's unlimited greatness and supremacy with no finite word, which no finite word can adequately convey. Along with the word Elohim for the Old Testament, we can also look at the Greek word that translates that Hebrew word Elohim, and that is the word God, or in the Greek, theos. The word theos, or name theos, simply means in Greek God, just like Elohim means God. It's always translated as God in any Greek, not just the New Testament Greek. It almost always refers to the one true God, obviously in the New Testament, although there are some times where the word gods is used, are the gods of paganism. In fact, Philippians 3:19 refers to a man whose God is their belly. In fact, 2 Corinthians 4:4, it's used of Satan, that he is the god of this age. But Jesus Christ himself is also designated as God in Romans 9:5, John 1, of course, 1:1, 1:18, and also in Titus 2:13, that he himself is God. The most frequent designation of God in the New Testament and the most common translation of the Hebrew word Elohim in the Greek translation of the Old Testament, the Septuagint. The significance of this name, the Greek word theos, when used for God, reveals the truth that he is the only one true God. Theos reveals the truth that God is unique. He is the only God, 1 Timothy 1:17. He is the only true God, John 17:3. He is the only holy one, Revelation 15:4. He is the only wise God, Romans 16:27. Believers are therefore to have no other gods beside the one true God. Theos reveals the truth that God is the creator, sustainer, and Lord of the universe and planner of the ages. We see that in Acts 17:24, Hebrews 3:4, and Revelation 10:6. Theos reveals the truth that God is Savior, because salvation comes from the Lord, from God. 1 Timothy 1 and Titus 1, we see that at other places in the pastoral epistles. In our next video, we're going to cover the name Yahweh.